Welcome back to our continuing coverage of the assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump. That shooting happened just 2 days before a critical event in the presidential race. It is a Republican National Convention that is happening here right behind me in Milwaukee, where delegates and surrogates are arriving. And also, in a few hours, former President Donald Trump himself. He said earlier that he had considered delaying his arrival here in Milwaukee by 2 days, but decided he was not going to let an attempted assassin stand in his way. I'm joined now by the pollster and communications strategist, Frank Luntz. And Frank, obviously, it feels weird to talk about politics in a moment like this. I'll just be blunt, because obviously we're learning more about the motive here and the shooter himself and the Secret Service and potential shortfalls of the security lapses at that place last night. But politics does matter here. It does play a factor in this, and it is something that could have an impact in a real way on the race that is shaping up. And just the conversation that I was just having with David Axelrod and Scott Jennings. Scott Jennings said that people should not underestimate the anger in the Republican Party after that attempted assassination of Trump. I wonder if you agree with that and how that could impact this race.
I'll be equally blunt, and it's frightening to me, and it's something that you and I have discussed on the air live several times. It's been a message that I've been trying and failing to deliver to the country for the last 3 or 4 years, and it's getting more and more urgent. I spoke as far back as 3 years ago about the possibility of violence coming into politics, and we know from our polling that half of Americans were expecting potential violence because of where we stand right now. We have fewer people who trust the electoral process, fewer people who think that their voice is being heard, fewer people who have confidence in the electoral institutions and the people who run them. This is a crisis, and one side talks about democracy in how it's executed. The other side talks about democracy in terms of the electoral process. We have to cool off. We have to calm down. I know in my focus groups that every time I address this, they go nuts. And they do it either face-to-face or online. We are an agitated, irritated country right now. And I will tell you that this is not the end. This is potentially only the beginning. So I appreciate the directness of your question. And we have to hold both sides accountable. Republicans need to call out other Republicans. Democrats need to call out other Democrats. It's easy to blame the other side. Let's accept responsibility ourselves.
Yeah, and when you look at that, you know, what's kind of scary is when you look at the recent Marist poll that came out, and there is a small subset of people who believe political violence is sometimes warranted or necessary. And I think, obviously, hopefully, the vast majority of people don't feel that way and don't want to see that. But what does that say about the moment that we're in?
I watched the video, and I know that you haven't drawn attention to it because it's embarrassing, and maybe you can't do it because of decency rules. But at the end of that Trump shooting, look at how many people are screaming at the camera, putting up their finger in the gesture, using 4-letter words, yelling at the media. These are people who don't accept that the media is a necessary component of democracy, who don't believe what they see, what they watch, who reject it, and now they're feeling like they can say and do anything. I urge you to cut that piece of footage to show your viewers, because that clearly articulates and demonstrates just how dangerous this condition is right now. I'll tell you, when I go to rallies, I do not get between the press and the people at a Trump rally, because it's frightening to me. And on the left, we saw what happened in the George Floyd demonstrations. Make no mistake, it wasn't peaceful. Buildings burned, people got hurt, people got really abused. And this is happening on both sides of the electorate. It's happening all across the country. And you are correct to point it out now, because if we're going to address it, it's got to happen at this convention and the Democratic convention, because I'm afraid what the fall will bring.
Frank Luntz, I think a lot of people are after last night. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
We have much more.